I am an primordial entity, as ancient as the very swamplands and bayous cloaking the Gulf coasts of Louisiana and eastern Texas. Our fecund, stagnant waters have cradled unspeakable, pernicious presences spawned from the eldritch spaces between worlds since before native tribes kindled their first ceremonial flames under the nebulous star shrouds. You know my brood's presence by the fearful names whispered in Creole and Caddo folklore. The rougarou, the loup-garou, the eerie, viscous lurkers said to prowl the waters after midnight in search of unwary victims. Trappers, loggers, and oil rig workers speak in hushed tones of strange splashings and muffled bestial calls echoing across the cypressed marshes on moonless nights. Many dismiss these tales as superstitious fancy, rooted in a lingering cultural gumbo of native shamanistic traditions and colonial-era French folklore. But those elder residents who truly know the bone-deep truth about what hides amid the black waters and tangled tupelo groves remain forever traumatized into guarded silence. You see, I represent one of the eldest broodlords of a malefic, antediluvian species spawned from the protobiological slimes in Earth's Archean inception eons before multicelled life emerged. We are the original primacies, ancient extra-dimensional ecosystems of amniohexed sentience that evolved in the superheated chemical rivers and gaseous matrices of your planet's perinatal stages. Our hungering broods proliferated across untold eons, slithering through boundary metamorphoses and population dualities incomprehensible to your current limited scientific understandings. We were the apex phytometers of this celestial body's platinized prehistory, unspooling in fractal biospheres across dissolved equilibria and Quranic phylum reifications. Truly, the labyrinthine interconnected metamorphoses of our brood's semi-substantive strati and Hylicene emerge, regress cycles would liquefy the neural superconductors of even your most cosmologically seasoned theorists. Let it suffice to say that we predated your illusory three-dimensional reality illusion by Murin lengths, and we shall drastically outlast it once we have metabolized the final iotas of covalent potential to nourish us. Our brood forms have persisted and complexified by traversing innumerable shoals of mathematical aperiodicity, broaching bizarre morphogenetic basins that harbored fecund skeins of quasi-life in dissipative replication modes until cosmic expansion parameter shifts triggered our outleakage into present-day configurations. In this currently manifested instantiation, each chelicerate cohort of my broodnest resembles a sort of blasphemous gestalt hybrid of vulpine, reptilian, and primordial insectoid vectors. Our segmented exoskeletons vary in hue from noxious indigo and bile greens to putrid mucus-slick grays and browns. Our worm-masked bodies are supported by clustered arrangements of sinuous limbs that terminate in vicious hooked appendages and graspers. Sibilant mouthparts bristling with rows of dagger-like fangs protrude from a cylindrical protuberance amid an undulating clot of veined sensory stalks that serve as our visual apparatus. Loyal brood members communicate via xenochemical secretions and hyperfrequencies beyond human audible bands. Those rare unfortunates who have espied even briefly the shocking sight of our emergence from sable bayou depths have described witnessing what appeared to be some great armored centipede abomination rising to rear from the mirrored waters. Their terrified accounts spoke of clusters of those questing stalked structures weaving hypnotically before discerning pairs of baleful scarlet spheres that seemed to burn directly into their consciousness. By day, my spread of broodlings and hunting clangs remained safely ensconced within vast subterranean cavern networks excavated over eons beneath the placid surfaces of Louisiana's most secluded river deltas and offshore inlets. But after the crimson rays of dusk paint the cypress canopies, we issue forth to scour the watery camouflages for viable new biosamples and hosts to harvest. Our preferred livestock are the indigenous Homo sapiens specimens that have proliferated across this region's tangled coastlines like a virus. They represent concentrated packets of energized biomass and neural electricity ripe for our harvesting processes. Our preferred livestock are the indigenous Homo sapiens specimens that have proliferated across this region's tangled coastlines like a virus. From the primal oozes where my brood's first quasi-molecular ancestors emerged, we evolved hyper-specialized mechanisms to absorb and metabolize the electrical impulses generated by complex nervous systems. The faint crackles of synaptic static and brainwave frequencies are like a siren call to our senses, allowing us to triangulate warm-blooded life forms amid the ambient biosoup. Human technology, with its ever-increasing emissions of electromagnetic radiation and signals, has only made this particular brood clan's duties laughably easy over recent centuries. We need only tune our stalked sensoria to the unique resonant bandwidths produced by concentrations of your wireless devices, electric grids, and broadcast transmissions to rapidly locate our prey. Many is the night our silent hunting parties have converged on the unsuspecting campsites of tranquil bayou-side getaways after detecting concentrated EM signatures amid the dank vegetation. By the time the screams begin in earnest, we have already encircled the perimeter and implemented containment procedures to prevent any escapees or witnesses. Our victims rarely have time to even register the full existential horror of what emerges dripping from the murky waters to surround them with gnashing, promised finality. One moment, they are enjoying their burgeoning sparks of consciousness around a crackling campfire, laughing and imbibing fermented grain solutions. The next, the ambience is shattered by a series of pulsed, low-frequency throbbing that seems to reverberate from everywhere at once. Those few survivors able to maintain even temporary islands of cognition amid the sudden synaptic overmind jamming describe seeing what appears to be a series of jewel-like crimson nodes materializing around their peaceful gathering place. At first, these baleful points of light appear in the forest canopy, wavering as if part of some disturbed constellation. But just as swiftly as the hypnotic crimson points splay into existence like night-blooming flora, other shapes begin emerging at the periphery of visible perception. These coalescing forms materialize in flickering strobic increments at the woodline, almost as if extraneous appendages leering down from an unperceivable higher dimension or phase space. By this point, the victim's neural networks will be awash in pure panic over mind signaling, the calming pathways of endorphin production and behavioral inhibition utterly hijacked by the overwhelming alien frequencies bombarding them. Most lose control of all voluntary motor functions at the sight of our brood's fully manifested approach, forms closing in with sickening rapidity. Those who maintain a visceral allegiance to reality describe monstrous centipede-like abominations rising up en masse through rippling spatial distortions at the forest's edge. Each nightmarish amalgam is supported by a twitching clot of hooked legs and piercing stalks, wading forth from eldritch plains as glistening fanged whirls part stagnant bayou waters. As the personal energy signatures of our prey spike into shrill overload from the raw reality horror inundating them, the first crackling arcs of ethereal energy begin to slither and coalesce between their neural clusters and the approaching xenosapiens. Within moments, the victim's cranial bioelectricity is utterly siphoned into our waiting conductors, their life essences absorbed and shuttled across space-time folds into our lightless birthing pools. Only the dried, functional husks of the poor souls remain amid the scattered detritus and dying campfire embers. Their vacant eyes and rictus expressions are haunting memento mori that our brood has once again harvested this feedstock of self-aware meat automatons that fecklessly roam these biospheres under the delusion of having some semblance of free will or purpose. While their ravaged brain pans may retain shape for a brief transgression in your linear Terran timescale, the interior structures are little more than fused circuitry and burned conduits emptied of the energizing electro-spark we so avidly harvest and consume. We leave these hollowed memento mori scattered amid the cypress knees and palmetto thickets as an ominous grave marker for the indigenous sapients to interpret in their backwards mythological dialects. The inhuman science behind our brood's ability to metabolize and shunt the thunderclap biofission of conscious neural activity is yet another truth your species' nascent sciences are eons from glimpsing, just as you have scarcely brushed the outer event horizons of this cosmos' deepest boundary conditions and phase realms.